Hello and welcome to 123stitch.com. Today we are going to make a no-sew wall hanging using the Ackfeld hanger. No sewing is involved in this. You can make banners that have lots of sewing involved, but this one is made just by using mounting board and some glue. Pretty easy to put together. I'm going to take you through it step by step. Before we get started though, please don't forget to go down below and click on that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming videos. And everything I do mention today will be listed as a link in the description below. Let's go ahead and get started on making one of these. Okay, let's first talk about the supplies you're going to need to finish your project. Obviously, we need a finished cross stitch piece. This one is Basket of Blooms Autumn by Anabella's. I just stitched it on a 14 count ivory Aida with DMC floss. And then to go with that, we need backing fabric, and I have chosen this one. I think it works well with the colors. You'll need enough to cover 2 pieces of mounting board, as well as some extra to make the hangers out of. Then we'll need something to hang it on, and I have chosen this beautiful sunflower design. This is an Ackfeld manufacturing hanger. You just want to make sure it's a good size for your project, and I think this is going to work just great. We will need press-on mounting board. This self-stick board is what I used. You need enough to cut 3 pieces of mounting board. So whatever your design size is, you'll need 3 pieces that are larger than it. You'll probably need more than 1 package, so buy an extra one just to make sure you have enough. We'll need something to cut the mounting board with, and I used just a regular box cutter. I cut it out on my cutting mat. I also like to use a quilting ruler because it has clear lines where I can see through and draw straight lines. We will need something to cut our fabric with, and you can either use a rotary cutter or you can just use regular scissors. We'll need some sticky back Velcro, and you do want the sticky back kind because we're not going to be sewing anything today. So get the sticky back Velcro, and this is used to attach the back side of our hangers. We'll need some double-sided acid-free mounting tape. This one is by Sew Emma. It's their 3/4 inch finishing tape, but you can also use Scor-Tape. That works just as well. We'll need some Aleene's Tacky glue for a couple of things. And we will need, to go with the finishing tape, I like to use my 4-in-1 essential sewing tool. I seem to use it all the time. In particular, I'm going to use the stiletto to help me get that backing off of the tape because sometimes that's a little hard to get off. And one more thing, I like to use a marking pen to mark the edges of my design so I can make sure I get it even all around on the mounting board. This one is the Styla water erasing pen by Sewline, and along with that there's a water eraser. So this is fabulous. It lets you mark on your fabric, then you use the eraser, which is filled with water, to dab on the line, and it comes off right away. You may want to test your fabric first before you try it out. I would definitely recommend that, but this works great. I've really been enjoying these products. I think that's all the supplies we're going to need. So next we're going to figure out what size to cut our fabric, what size to cut our backing boards, and we'll go from there. All right, let's measure our design to see how large it is. And I'm going to just go corner to corner. It looks like it's about 4 inches by 4 inches. Now, you want to decide how much fabric you want to leave on the borders. And I would recommend normally doing about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. Because my hanger is pretty large and my design's relatively small, I'm going to do 1/2 inch all the way around. So I find it very helpful to write down the measurements as I go. So I have my design size written as 4 inches by 4 inches, and I want to do 1/2 inch all around. So that's going to make the actual finished piece 5 inches by 5 inches, right? 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. That makes 5 inches all around. So 5 inches is what I want to mark on my fabric, and then we'll go to the backing boards after that. I am going to use my water erasable pen, and I'm going to go to the very edge of my design, and I'm going to mark out 1/2 inch. Now you can draw the line all the way. I prefer to just do a tiny bit. because, especially on Ada, because you don't need to, you can follow the lines. You don't need to be as precise. So there we go. If I were doing like a linen or an even weave, I might want to draw the whole line, but in this case, I'm just going to do the corners. Half an inch. Got to find the top part of your design. Half an inch. Over here, and do half an inch. Now you can mark on the back side, but I have tested the pen on this fabric and it comes right out with water, so I'm not worried about it coming off. And it actually shows through both sides anyway, so it doesn't really matter which side I do it on. And let's get to the bottom here. Okay, now that is my design size, but to cut the fabric, I want to allow about an extra inch. So let's get this out of our way. I'm going to do an extra inch beyond that line, just approximate. It does not need to be exact, and I'm just going to use my scissors. This is just trimming it down so that when we turn it around to the back side of our mounting board, we have plenty of fabric to hold it in place. And we can always trim it down more later if it seems like too much fabric, so don't be afraid to cut it bigger. And easiest thing is to just do scissors. Okay, so we've got our design size, we got our fabric cut. Now we're gonna want to cut our backing boards. This size, with the design size was 4x4, the actual size that we're gonna cut it to is 5x5. So what I need is 2 pieces of self-stick mounting board that measure 5 inches by 5 inches. And I have already cut those. So it's gonna go like this. And we're gonna have about a half an inch showing all around. So I have 2 pieces cut to that size. And then for the piece that's gonna go behind it, I want to add 1/4 of an inch all around. So this was 5x5. I want a third piece cut that is 5.5 by 5.5 inches, and that is gonna look like this. So when we mount it, we're gonna have that little bit of fabric showing through, and then our design's gonna be on here. And then this other piece will go on the back. I'll explain all that in just a little bit. It'll make more sense, I promise. Okay, the first thing we're gonna do is put our fabric on our mounting, on our first board, and this is the 5x5 board. Okay. And it looks to me like I have drawn this line way off, so good opportunity to show you how to use the water erasable pen. It's got the water in it. I'm just gonna dab it, and like magic, that marker comes off. So let's look at this again. This needed to be 1/2 an inch above. Which is right there. There we go, that looks better. That wasn't making sense before. Okay, so now we're gonna take our 5x5, one of our smaller boards, and we're going to take the sticky back off. And I don't like to put sticky back on my stitched piece at all. So the sticky back is on the back side. I'm gonna turn this upside down. I'm gonna look for my lines and line this up. We're gonna be able to adjust it, so don't worry if it doesn't look perfect. We're gonna press down the edges just briefly to see what that looks like. We're aiming for that 1/2 inch all around. Looks like we can come down a little bit. Come up a little bit. Like I said, with Ada, you can follow the lines, so that helps. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Okay, before I stick this down, I'm going to get rid of all my blue lines. Whoops, get rid of all my blue lines so they're not in our way. And we make sure they're off of our fabric. It's easier to do it now than it is later. Now, if you don't want to use the marking pen, you certainly don't have to. It just helps line it up, I think. But if you're at all leery about marking the front side of your piece, which is understandable, don't use it. I'm all for making it quick and easy. That's why I use this. Okay, that's all off. So it looks straight. It looks pretty even. So I'm going to first bring the corners down. And this is definitely too much fabric. So let's trim the corners a little bit, because we want to bring the corner in first and tack that down. Bring the corner in first and tack it down. That way we get those nice corners. So now we can undo this side a little bit. Bring the corner in. And bring that corner in. Okay, now that we have our corners in, we can bring down the other sides. And this is where the sticky board comes in nice and handy, because it just holds that fabric in place. And you can check it while you're putting it down. Make sure everything looks good. Make sure everything's still straight and you got the nice corners. These corners are going to show on the outside, so you're going to want to make sure that it looks the way you want it to look. There we go. Kind of play with it a little bit. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. There's our first piece, all set. Okay, now that we have our stitch piece all ready to go, we're going to take the other two pieces of backing board and cut out 2 pieces of backing fabric. And again, we just want about 1 inch around, doesn't need to be exact. Just lay the board on the fabric and just kind of cut around it a little bit. Okay. Okay, and if your fabric is one directional, or at least a little one directional like mine is with the polka dots, you're just going to want to make sure that everything lines up nicely. So what we're going to do is, for each piece, we're going to take the backing off of our sticky board. There we go. Love this stylus. It helps get that tape off. And we're going to put the fabric right side down. We're going to put the sticky side up. We're going to trim our corners a little bit. If you trim the corners, it's just a little easier to get if you trim the fabric on the corners a little bit, it's easier to turn the corners under. Okay. Now that that's on there, we're going to turn our corners under, just like we did with the other piece. And we're going to make sure that it looks straight. It looks good. I'm going to move this over just a little bit, a little off center. And there we go. Bring the corner under. Once the corner's under, we can bring the straight edge under. check that it looks straight, and then do another corner. Go. Okay, and then the last one here. All right, that looks good. That one's done. Let's do this one. Fabric right side down, trim our corners. Backing off, right side up, and then we do our corners first. You just kind of pull it tight from the corner, and that gets you that nice sharp corner. That looks straight. And then our last side. There we go. Okay, so it's going to look like this. This is the bigger piece, and then this is going to go right on top of it. Doesn't that look good? I think that's perfect. So see, we've got that little 1/4 inch border all around the edges. So now we need to attach this to this. Now, there's a little bit of sticky in here, but it's nowhere near enough to hold it to here. So that's where our glue comes in handy. And we're just going to put glue around the edges of our stitch piece. And this is Aleene's Tacky glue. It does dry clear, so you don't need to worry about it. Okay. Now, we just want to make sure this goes in the center of our design. Getting that 1/4 of an inch all around. There we go. Press that down. Oh, it's looking gorgeous already. Okay. Now, I'm just going to set this aside. I'm going to put something heavy on it so it has some time to set. And we're going to deal with our next piece. Now, if you've got corners that are sticking up here, we want to make sure everything lays as flat as possible. So that's where the mounting tape comes in handy. I'm just going to tear off a little bit of this mounting tape and get our edges down. Sometimes if they stick up more than others, you can do this each time, or like on my other pieces, it didn't seem necessary, so I'm not going to worry about it. Now, because it's sticky, we might as well get the backing off here. There we go. You can leave it like it is because we're going to glue it anyway, but if it's sticky anyway, you might as well take advantage of that adhesive. There we go. Okay, now this is going to go on the back side of our design. It's going to go this way so that this is going to cover the back side nice and pretty. But one thing we need to do before we put that back on is to put our little loop hangers on. And I made those, you can use ribbon, you can use whatever you want. What I did is I made these out of the same fabric that's used on the design. So they're going to go like this, and they're going to hang on my design. So what I want to decide is where I'm going to place them. Now, to make these, you cut a piece. You can make them as wide as you want. Again, it just depends on the size of your fabric, but I cut pieces, here's my piece. I cut pieces about 3 inches by 6 inches. And then what I did is I pressed the ends under, and then I folded to the center, both sides, and then I folded that whole thing in half. So that gave me about a 3/4 inch hanger. So if you want something bigger, you need to start with something bigger than 3 inches. You need to go maybe 4 inches if you want a wider hanger. But that worked pretty well for me. So started with 3 inches, pressed the edges under, pressed these 2 ends together, and then folded the whole thing in half. And then I just ran a line of glue inside there, glued it down, and they're ready to go. They're much longer than I need, but I'm gonna start longer because that's always easier. Now, if you have your sewing machine out and you wanna sew that seam, go for it, but we're not sewing today, so this is easier. Just glue it down. Okay, this is setting quite nicely. So what we're gonna do now, like I said, is we're gonna decide where do we want our hangers. And what I like to do is put that open seam on the inside so it's hidden a little bit. That seems pretty good to me. So let's measure that. And that's about, the center of it is about 1 inch from the end. So about 1/2 inch in on each side. So what we're gonna wanna do is attach one side of our hanger on the back of this piece. And then we'll put this on the top, and then we'll be folding this over and attaching that end with Velcro. The reason we're doing that is because if you have a fabric hanger, you can bend it to get the hoops on. We can't do that with cardboard. So we're gonna be attaching on one side, bending it over, and then attaching with Velcro on the back side. That might make more sense after I demonstrate it. Okay, so my piece is much longer than it needs to be. So I think I'm actually gonna cut it. The cuts end in there, and just make sure I leave enough to turn over. And that seems sufficient. So we wanted 1/2 inch in from the side, and then we're gonna glue it in place. I'm gonna use my ruler to mark my 1/2 inch in, which is right about there, right about there. So we're gonna get our glue, and we're gonna glue this down. Inch in, right about there. I actually want that cut end in there, so let's measure that again. Right about there. Okay. Okay. Now that we've got our hangers in place, and this is still longer, I'm gonna move it down a little. Okay, then our backing piece is gonna go right on here. And it's not as big as the other piece because we want it to just sort of hide back there. You don't have to put this piece on, but I like it to cover the back side and make it all look nice and pretty. So they're sticky here, but I'm gonna put glue around the edges. And again, you can use that double-sided tape if you prefer to hold the whole thing in place, or you can just use the glue. Okay, now we're gonna just make sure we cover our hangers there. Press that down. Okay, that's what it's gonna look like from this front side. Now, I wanna make sure this is set. So I am going to put a heavy book on it, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna finish up. Okay, the only thing left to do is to attach the Velcro to our design. We're going to take both pieces of the Velcro, attach one end to the end of our loop and one end to the backing board. And just stick those on. It's going to look like this. And then we can just attach our hanger. Just feed that through. Connect the Velcro, and then you can adjust it if you need to straighten it out a little bit. And there we go. There is our no-sew wall hanging with an Ackfeld hanger. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please leave us a comment down below. We love to hear from you. I read and answer them all. If you have any ideas for future videos, I'd love to hear about those as well. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on anything. See you again soon.